Hi there and welcome back to the channel. If you've been here before, you'll know that my boat Martina is a 40-year-old due for 2800, and what we're going to talk about today in the video is a problem that I had with the engine. Now, it's not the original engine, which I changed about 2 years ago for a 10-year-old replacement engine, exchanging the Volvo Penta MD7A for a newer Volvo Penta D1-20. Yes, a major part of the engine did dissolve, or corrode really, due to galvanic action between the aluminium heat exchanger, this part here, and the steel engine block. I thought I'd done everything correctly, but as you'll see, it turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. So let's talk about how it all began. One weekend we were out sailing and the overheating alarm came on. Now we are about 25 minutes from the sea back to our berth, and so we were reliant on the engine. We did all the normal things. We checked that plenty of water was coming out of the exhaust, we checked the coolant levels, and we checked the water intake strainer because we do settle in the mud and sometimes that can get blocked. Everything looked fine. So I came home, looked online and checked the discussion groups to see if there was an inherent problem with the engine. And I asked around friends who were at the yard. The fluid level looked okay and there was no water in the oil, so I didn't think we had a gasket blown in the cylinder head. However, the thermostat looked as if it was distorted, so I thought that was the cause and we should change it. An easy job. Ran it for one weekend and it all seemed fine. So the following weekend, as planned, three of us set off for a trip to Sovereign Harbour in Eastbourne. Now that's about 26 nautical miles, but that day the wind was right on the nose and there was a big swell in the English Channel. I had my two friends Alan and Steve on board, and just as we left the mouth of the river I asked Steve to go below and shut off the engine, and just as we were about to go below, it cut out itself. There may have been an alarm, but we couldn't hear it over the wind and wave noise. But we checked the fluid levels again and they were down, so Steve topped them up and we all agreed that we could carry on. Now we had to tack a load more times than I'd planned because we were trying to keep close to the shore and keep out of the big swells in the channel. As we approached Sovereign Harbour, we started the engine and it started fine but only lasted 5 minutes. By now it was really losing fluid and Steve was continuously topping it up just to get us into the harbour. But we left the boat there, and that's where I pick up in the video and show how I went step by step through all the alternatives before I found the real cause. Well, here I am in the bowels of the locker. I'm trying to find out what's wrong with the engine, which has been overheating and losing water through the coolant system. I've replaced the thermostat, which I thought was not working properly and was causing it to overheat, but she's still losing water. So my next thing to look at is the heat exchanger, and I'm going to try that now. It's a Volvo Penta D1-20 engine, and the thermostat was here and I replaced it, and this is the remainder of the heat exchanger. Now, as I understand it, we have to undo these three bolts, which are 5mm Allen key. Of course, typically can't get to the third bolt in there without removing the air filter, so I'll do that now. Well, that's the air filter removed, so I can get to that last nut. Undo the Jubilee clips that hold the rubber elbow that comes out of the heat exchanger and discharges into the cast iron elbow from the exhaust. Okay, now this is a reconditioned engine which has been painted, so what should be easy joints. As you can see, I had to scrape away a bit on the thermostat housing to get into this heat exchanger. The recommendation, according to some of the forum, is use a soft-faced hammer, so I'm going to try that. Not a lot of success there. Before I go too much further on the back of the heat exchanger, I'm going to try undoing the hoses here and removing the front plate. So that's the two hoses, one from the reservoir and one that discharge back into the reservoir. So as you can see, the reservoir is completely empty. And coming into the marina last night, the engine started overheating, and although we kept on topping it up, we've lost all the coolant. As I said earlier, because it's a reconditioned engine that's been painted, all of the Allen key holes have got to be cleared out before you can properly seat the Allen key. Trying to break the seal between the cap, which may actually be plastic, I'm not sure. Trying to break the paint bond so I can prise it off. Well, I've managed to prise the end off, and yes, it is plastic with I think brass inserts, so you don't want to bang it too hard. And you can see the heat exchanger, which looks to be quite gummed up, but whether it's leaking or not, we'll have to investigate. Well, it wasn't pretty, and it took a lot of straining, but and gentle persuasion with a soft-faced mallet and a couple of screwdrivers, but I got it out. Looks not bad. I can't see any obvious signs of leakage, so try and put it under test if I can, and see where we go from here. Well, this might look like a bit of Heath Robinson testing. I've put a rubber boot on the bottom of the heat exchanger, and I filled it up, and it's been overnight, and no water has leaked. So I know it's not under pressure, but I think it's a good test. The reason I'm doing that is because I spoke to the Volvo main dealer, who doubted that it would be the heat exchanger, and has suggested that it is I should check the exhaust elbow first. So that's what I'm about to try now. So back to where we were. This is the next day. You can see the exhaust elbow and the connection to the back of the heat exchanger here. So I'm going to try taking that off. Start by loosening the exhaust hose. Managed to get the exhaust pipe off. Now trying to loosen the bolts. Of course, the pain is trying to get to the last remaining stud or nut on the far side of the elbow. Okay, well, I've got the four nuts undone, so I'm hopefully able to remove the rear elbow, which is pretty gummed up, but I'll look at that outside. One of the 4 O-rings. Well, I've got the elbow out. If I remove the rubber elbow, I think we've found the culprit, but it's completely gummed up with rust and presumably soot from the exhaust. Well, I'll try cleaning that out, see where we get. Well, I've connected a hose to the inlet and blown it through, but as you can see, a lot of crap in it. So I've taken the decision that I don't trust this cast steel elbow, and I've ordered a stainless steel equivalent, which should arrive tomorrow. So we're back at the boat. It's Friday. Another 2 days have passed, but I've finally got the replacement part from Repower Marine. Ooh. Wow, look at that. And it also comes with a gasket. So there we have the old one with the new one. Looks fantastic. So the replacement part seems to be made by a company called HDI Marine, which according to Repower's website I think is American. Well, I've wire brushed everything down, cleaned as much of the scale off as I can, and put the heat exchanger back in position and start to reassemble things. So it's a 5mm Allen key to hold which holds the cap and the plate for the heat exchanger in place, 3 positions. I should have said that I fitted 2 of the O-rings that came in the pack on this end, one which went on the exchanger itself and one which went into a recess in the cap. So now it's fit the return to the reservoir and the supply from the impeller. Well, it seems to be complete. Just hope it holds water. Now at the other end of the stack, so I've put one of the O-rings on, of the 4 O-rings, and the other one is on the inside of the cover here. This goes on, and although it looks equilateral triangle, if it's anything like the first one, it only goes on one way. Yep, as I suspected, it only goes in the one way with the pipe towards the bottom. So now I'll begin tightening them up with the 5mm Allen key. It's all a bit logical really when you think about where the outlet for the water has to go into the exhaust elbow. Now the new exhaust elbow, it comes with a gasket, but I'm a bit concerned about just how little meat there is left at this point in the casting. So I'm going to add some extra sealant down this edge. It's very thin. There's a small tube of sealant in the kit. I don't know whether it's to do the big heat exchanger gasket or this one, but I'm going to put it on this one anyway. And I notice it says ALU on it. I guess it's to assist in galvanic protection between the heat exchanger and the stainless steel exhaust. So I've attached the little rubber elbow onto the top of the stainless steel elbow and try and fit it all in place. This is the really fiddly bit. I'll remember to put on the support bracket for the electrics. These little nuts with the sort of washer part to it. The worst one is getting it around the back. Because of the proximity of the elbow, the only real way of getting into these is a 12mm ring spanner. I think everything's tightened up on that. Just now fix the exhaust hose onto the end. That's the exhaust hose clip back on. One of the benefits of doing this, of course, is you get to turn all the clips round the way that suits you, rather than the engine builder. Last job now is the air filter. Well, it all seems to be finished. Only thing left to do now is top up the reservoir and give it a turn over. I don't have the proper Volvo coolant yet, so I'll have to do that later, but I just want to try and see if there's any leaks. Of course, when I started the engine, after doing all this work, the water gushed out of the elbow that I just fitted. And I realised it was now time to call in the experts. Graham, the marine engineer who had changed the engine for me, with loads of experience, came down, and he suspected what the cause might be and brought a mirror with him so he could look into the engine. He poked around with a screwdriver and he found a hole just here, as you can see, where of course the water from the heat exchanger was bypassing straight into the raw water. I checked the price of a new part from Volvo and it was really expensive. But Graham knew of a Dutch second-hand parts dealer called AB Marine Services, and they had a second-hand replacement which arrived in 2 days. So the part has arrived from Marine Service, the Dutch company that Graham found, and we'll go ahead and see how it looks. So the heat exchanger, though we don't need it, it comes with the heat exchanger and the body itself. It's got one stud missing but I'm hoping we can take the stud from the old exchange unit and screw it in, but there looks to be more meat around the edges. So I've also got the plastic ends and the cover for the thermostat. All the parts look like they've been sandblasted for inspection. And thermocouple and the bolts. The O-ring looks a bit tacky, but I've got new O-rings anyway. Okay, so Graham's just smoothing up where they've obviously cleaned the old part.
Sat around for a while.
Has it? Yeah. When you compare the metal that's there on the replacement block compared to what's on this, there's just so little left. This edge can really compare one with the other. And we know it wasn't as bad as that when we first looked at it, but just a slight touch with the screwdriver and Graham went right through it. The only disadvantage of this replacement part is that one of the studs is missing, so we're having to try and remove one of the old ones here, which of course is stubborn as hell. The only way to get it out is to use two nuts locked, but an awful lot of removal of the aluminium around it to try and loosen the stud. Swapping the drain valve over from the old block to the new one. Fitting the 4 O-rings. As we know, there's 3 holes, but there's only one way that it fits in. Yeah, when you think about it, it's obvious which one goes on which end, because the one to the far end has got the O-ring already in it, whereas this end, the O-rings are on the stack itself. New gasket and a bit of sealant.
Jollop.
Jollop. Okay, that's all the bits that we took from the old head, and the new one looking good. Putting the gasket back on.
Well, there's only one way it can go, but we've got to cut a little bit of a hole out for it, because that stud, that one's alright, but we've got to put one in there. Look at that.
There we go. So 10mm socket to tighten up the studs. We had to take the alternator off out of the way to remove the block, so bit of a struggle to get this back in now. Put the electric control box back. So the belt's back on, just got to tighten the alternator back up. Well, I hope you found that interesting and helpful, and I think it shows that it's not worth penny pinching and cutting back on the manufacturer's recommendations. The replacement engine was a good choice, but you do run the risk of hidden weaknesses like this. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.